greasy eggs hit his face first, then the bacon, then the ketchup red as blood down that expensive crimson silk shirt. Officer Frank Miller stood over him, sneering, waiting for this black man to snap to give him a reason to make things worse. But Marcus Sterling just sat there, wiped his chin, looked up with eyes cold as winter, and said 5 words that made Miller's smirk die, "You just ended your career." Hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Stay till the end, because what happens next will blow your mind. Now let me tell you about the day a dirty cop learned he'd picked the wrong man to humiliate. Marcus Sterling had known men like Frank Miller his entire life. Cartel enforcers who'd murdered dozens, terrorists who'd planned mass casualties, stone-cold killers who wouldn't blink before pulling a trigger. But somehow the casual cruelty of a small-town bully with a badge hit different, because Miller thought it was easy, thought it was safe, thought the man in the expensive shirt was just another target who'd fold. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Sterling sat in the corner booth at the Gilded Spoon, same spot he'd claimed every morning for the past week since moving into the Henderson estate. The coffee was decent. The worn leather book in his hands, a first edition Ellison he'd found in Baltimore, kept him company. He wasn't looking for trouble. The bell over the door chimed. Sterling didn't look up, but his training kicked in automatically. 2 men. Heavy footfalls. Aggressive body language. The diner went quiet, conversation stopping mid-sentence, silverware freezing over plates. Officer Frank Miller and his shadow, Rico Rizzo. Sterling knew their type before he even saw their faces. 15 years with the Bureau had taught him to profile cops in seconds. The good ones, the conflicted ones, the ones who'd crossed so many lines, they couldn't even see them anymore. Miller was a predator. Sterling could smell it from across the room. "Morning, Frank?" The owner stammered from behind the counter. S was his name. Nervous little man who probably paid protection money without realizing it. Miller ignored him. His eyes were scanning Hunting. They landed on the corner booth. On Sterling. On that crimson silk shirt that probably cost more than Miller made in a week. Sterling felt the weight of that stare. He'd been in Crestwood Hills for 7 days, and he'd already clocked the dynamics. 95% white wealthy, insulated. The kind of place where a black face was either help or an anomaly. He was neither, and that made him dangerous to men like Miller. Sterling turned a page in his book, took a slow sip of coffee. Didn't give Miller the satisfaction of acknowledgement. Not yet, but Miller was already moving. The heavy boots thudded across the checkered floor. Conversations died completely. The entire diner held its breath. Sterling counted the steps. 8, 7, 6. He closed the book slowly, his finger marking the page. Only then did he raise his eyes. Miller was standing over him, hands on his belt. Up close, Sterling could see the broken capillaries in his nose, the slight tremor in his hands. A drinker, probably pills too. "You're in my seat." Miller's voice was low, meant to intimidate. Behind him, Rizzo was grinning, arms crossed. They'd done this before. This was a routine. Sterling glanced around at the half-empty diner. "There are several other seats available, officer. I'm sure one will work." The polite response? The reasonable response. Gasoline on Miller's fire. "I don't think you heard me." Miller leaned in, hands pressing flat on the table, stale cigarettes and last night's bourbon. "This is my table, and you people don't belong here." There it was. You people. Sterling's jaw tightened just a fraction. He'd heard those words before. In Mississippi when he was 8, watching his father get pulled over for no reason. In Chicago when he was 20, getting stopped and frisked outside his own apartment. In 100 interrogation rooms across a dozen cities. "I'm a resident of Crestwood Hills," Officer Sterling said, each word precise. "Just like you. I belong wherever I choose to sit." Miller's face flushed darker. The calm refusal was more than he could handle. "Frank?" Rizzo's voice soft but eager. Sterling saw it coming before it happened. Miller's eyes flicked to the neighboring table where a young couple had abandoned their breakfast. Miller's hand moved fast, snatching a plate loaded with half-eaten eggs, bacon, hash browns swimming in ketchup. Time slowed. Sterling could have stopped it. His reflexes were faster. He could have caught Miller's wrist, twisted it, put him on the ground in 2 seconds. But he didn't. Because this wasn't about winning a fight. This was about something bigger. This required Miller to make the mistake, to cross the line so completely there'd be no walking it back. So Sterling sat perfectly still as Miller turned and dumped the entire plate on his head. The greasy, lukewarm mess slid down his face, yolk in his eyes, bacon grease in his hair, ketchup thick and red dripping down the crimson silk. The diner gasped. Sterling didn't move. "Now it looks like you've had an accident," Miller announced loud enough for everyone. "Maybe you should go home and clean yourself up. Don't come back." Miller waited for the explosion, the swing, the shove, anything he could use. Sterling reached for a napkin. Slowly, deliberately, he wiped the yolk from his eyes with surgical precision, wiped his face. The silence was absolute. Even Miller seemed thrown. Sterling set the napkin down, looked up, met Miller's eyes, and smiled. Not friendly, not warm. A smile that promised this moment would haunt Miller for the rest of his life. "You're right, officer," Sterling said, his voice barely above a whisper, but cutting through the silence like a knife. "I have had an accident, and you just made the biggest mistake of your entire life." For one heartbeat, something flickered behind Miller's eyes. Doubt, uncertainty, the primal recognition that he'd just kicked something that shouldn't have been kicked. But the moment passed. His bravado surged back. "Is that a threat?" Miller's hand moved to his gun. "Because that sounds like a threat. Maybe we need to take a trip downtown." Sterling rose from the booth. He was taller than Miller. That registered on the cop's face, irritation. Sterling pulled a crisp 20 from his wallet, set it on the table. More than enough for the coffee and a generous tip for the waitress frozen near the kitchen. "There's nothing to discuss, Renew," Sterling said. "Everything that needs to be said has been said. Everything that needs to be done will be done." He walked toward the exit. Every eye followed him. The ketchup on his shirt looked like blood in the morning light. The door swung shut behind him. Miller stood there breathing hard, feeling the stares. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The guy was supposed to fight back. "Get statements," Miller growled to Rizzo. "From everyone. Make sure they saw him get aggressive, threatening an officer." Rizzo nodded, already moving notepad out. But at table 6, a young woman was shaking. Chloe Peterson, 22, working double shifts to pay for night school. Her phone was in her apron pocket. Her thumb was still pressed against the screen. She'd recorded everything. An hour later, Miller sat at his desk in the 14th precinct typing with 2 fingers. Subject identified as Marcus Sterling became verbally abusive and aggressive when asked to relocate from a table needed for officers on duty. Behind him, Chief David Thorne stood reading over his shoulder, nodding with each fabricated sentence. "Good," Thorne said. "Keep it simple." Subject made veiled threats, Miller continued typing. Hostile demeanor created a public disturbance. During the attempt to de-escalate, subject lunged, causing a plate of food to be accidentally spilled. Accidentally, that was the word that would save them. That would transform assault into mishap, turn Miller from perpetrator into professional officer managing a difficult situation. "What about witnesses?" Thorne asked. "Rizzo's got them. S knows better than to cause problems. Most of the regulars will back us. Anyone who doesn't," Miller shrugged. "We'll say they're biased." Thorne smiled. A politician's smile. "You know what I like about you, Frank? You understand the game. This Sterling rich guy moves in, thinks he can throw his weight around. People like that need reminders of who really runs this town." Miller leaned back. "You think he'll push back?" "Guys like that always push back. They'll threaten lawsuits, call the mayor, maybe try the media." Thorne's smile widened. "But we control the narrative. We have the official report. We have witnesses. We have the system." What they didn't have was the truth. And what they didn't know was that the system they trusted was about to betray them. Besides, Thorne added, the diner's security cameras had a malfunction this morning. Technical difficulties. Very unfortunate timing. Miller grinned. Very unfortunate. The lie was complete. Polished. Airtight. It would be in the system within an hour, officially recorded, officially sanctioned. They had no idea that 3 blocks away, Chloe Peterson was staring at her phone with shaking hands. The video was grainy, shot low, partially obscured by the sugar dispenser, but the audio was crystal clear. Every word, every threat, every slur. And the unmistakable sound of food being dumped, followed by Miller's triumphant announcement. She watched it 3 times, her heart pounding harder each replay. She thought about her student loans, her rent, the second job she'd need now that this one might be in jeopardy. Then she thought about Marcus Sterling's face as that food dripped down his chin. The dignity, the restraint, the quiet promise that justice would come. She opened her laptop, created a new email account. Throwaway, anonymous. She found the website of Isabella Rossi, the city's most notorious civil rights attorney. Subject evidence in the Marcus Sterling case. Body, I was there. I saw everything. The police are lying. I have video. She attached a screenshot, Miller standing over Sterling plate in hand, sneer on his face. Her finger hovered over send. This was it. The moment she chose a side. The moment she decided some things were more important than safety. She pressed send. Isabella Rossi received the email at 11:47 p.m. just as she was closing her laptop. She'd been following the Sterling case since the news broke that afternoon, the official police report, the statements, the carefully constructed narrative of a belligerent resident and professional officers. She'd smelled the lie immediately. 20 years of civil rights law had given her a nose for cover-ups. This one reeked. She opened the email, read it once, twice, stared at the screenshot. Then she smiled. Not pleasant, the smile of a predator who'd just found blood in the water. She forwarded it to her investigator with one line, "Find this person, protect them, get me that video." She knew Marcus Sterling by reputation. Everyone in the legal community did. The FBI agent who'd taken down the Alvarez cartel. The man who'd gone undercover for 3 years in a domestic terror cell and emerged with enough evidence to send 24 people to federal prison for life. If Miller and Thorne thought they'd picked on some random wealthy newcomer, they were in for a rude awakening. Rossi picked up her phone, dialed a number from memory. It rang twice. "Rossi?" Sterling's voice was calm, unsurprised. "Mr. Sterling, we should talk." "We should." "Tomorrow morning, my office, 9 a.m. "I'll be there." The line went dead. Rossi poured herself a scotch and walked to her window. Somewhere out there, Miller was sleeping soundly, confident in his lies. Somewhere out there, Thorne was dreaming of his political future. Somewhere out there, Chloe was lying awake, terrified and brave. And somewhere out there, Marcus Sterling was planning a war. Rossi raised her glass. "Game on, gentlemen." Sterling stood in his library, lights off, looking out at Crestwood Hills from the highest point in the neighborhood. Pretty streets. Manicured lawns. The American dream packaged and sold. Underneath, rot. He'd seen it in the way people looked at him during morning runs. The way conversations stopped when he entered the grocery store. The casual assumption that he didn't belong. Miller had just been the most honest about it. His phone buzzed. Encrypted text. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Come ready for war. IR, Isabella Rossi." He'd researched her the moment he'd decided to buy the house. If things went sideways and he'd suspected they might, she'd be his first call. He texted back, "See you then." But there was another call to make first. He scrolled through his contacts, found the number listed simply as Evans. Detective Michael Evans. They'd worked together 5 years ago on a joint task force. Good cop, honest cop, the rarest kind. Evans had transferred to the 14th Precinct 2 years ago. One of 3 decent officers in a department systematically corrupted from the top down. The phone rang 4 times. A sleepy voice answered. "Hello." "Mike, it's Marcus Sterling." Silence. Then, "Jesus, Marcus. How long has it been?" "5 years. I need to see you tomorrow night. Off the books." The silence stretched. Sterling could almost hear the gears turning. "This about the diner." "You heard?" "Whole precinct heard. Miller's been bragging." Evans's voice dropped. "Marcus, be careful. Thorne and Miller, they're dirty. They've been running this place like their kingdom for years." "I know. That's why I need to see you." Another pause. "Parking garage, level 3, 10th and Main, 11 p.m. tomorrow?" "I'll be there." "Marcus, whatever you're planning." "Justice, Mike, I'm planning justice." He hung up. Sterling walked through the darkened house to the basement. Normal suburban basement, finished walls, home gym, storage boxes. Behind the false wall at the back, accessible only through a biometric lock, was something else. He pressed his palm to the scanner. The wall clicked, slid aside. Inside was his real office. Computer systems that could crack Pentagon-level encryption. Communication equipment linked directly to FBI headquarters. Files. Terabytes of data. Years of intelligence work. The accumulated arsenal of a man who'd spent his adult life taking apart criminal empires. Sterling sat at the console, fingers moving across the keyboard. He started with Miller. Personnel file. Easy enough to access through law enforcement databases he still had clearance for. What he found was predictable. 15 years, on the force. 6 complaints of excessive force, all dismissed. 2 lawsuits settled quietly. A pattern of aggression, particularly toward minorities. A disciplinary hearing 3 years ago that resulted in a promotion. All signed off by Chief David Thorne. Sterling dug deeper. Thorne was even more interesting. 30 years on the force. Meteoric rise. Political connections, reaching into the mayor's office, city council, state legislature. Reputation as a tough-on-crime chief who'd cleaned up the suburbs. But underneath the polish, the truth. Suppressed complaints. Buried investigations. Systematic pattern of protecting officers like Miller while persecuting anyone who spoke up. Internal affairs investigators transferred or forced into retirement. Whistleblowers suddenly under investigation for phantom violations. Thorne had built a machine. Corrupt, self-sustaining, wrapped in the legitimacy of law enforcement itself. Nearly invisible. But Sterling had spent 15 years finding invisible things. He made a list. Officers to investigate. City officials who'd taken bribes. Lawyers who'd facilitated cover-ups. Judges who'd been suspiciously lenient. A spiderweb with Thorne in the middle. Every web had a weak point. Sterling's job was to find it and pull until the whole thing came apart. His phone buzzed. Another encrypted text from a number he didn't recognize. "I'm the waitress. I have the video. Please keep me safe, Kay." Sterling stared at the message, then forwarded it to Rosie with one word: priority. Chloe Peterson had just made herself the most important person in this case, also the most vulnerable. Sterling opened another encrypted line to FBI headquarters in Quantico. He typed a message to an old friend in criminal investigations. "Need protective detail. Civilian witness in civil rights case, high risk. Will explain in person. Sterling." Response came back in under a minute. "Done. Send details. Chen." Sterling allowed himself a small smile. Miller and Thorne thought they were playing checkers. They had no idea they'd just sat down to chess with a grandmaster. Morning came cold. Sterling dressed carefully. Not silk this time, that was evidence now bagged and tagged. Simple black suit, white shirt, no tie. Professional? Authoritative? The uniform of a man who belonged in courtrooms and federal buildings. He arrived at Rossi's office at 8:45 a.m. Downtown glass and steel. The receptionist looked up. Started the standard greeting, then stopped. Her eyes widened. She'd seen the news. "Mr. Sterling," she said, recovering. "Ms. Rossi is expecting you. Conference room B, 5th floor." The elevator rose in silence. Sterling caught his reflection in the polished doors. He looked tired. He was tired. Tired of this. Tired of men like Miller. Tired of systems like Thorne's. Tired of having to prove again and again that he had the right to exist in spaces that people like him had built with their own hands and blood. The elevator chimed. 5th floor. Rossi was waiting, standing by the window, coffee in hand. She turned as he entered. "Agent Sterling? Just Marcus? Isabella?" She gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have work to do." He sat. She remained standing, pacing. A lawyer's habit. "I've been doing this for 20 years, she said. "Civil rights cases, police misconduct, systemic corruption. I've seen every play in the book. This case, your case, it's different." "How so?" "Because Miller and Thorne made it personal. They humiliated you in public on camera, then lied about it with the kind of arrogance that tells me they've been getting away with this for years." She stopped, looked directly at him. "But more importantly, they didn't know who you are. They thought you were just another victim they could bury." "I'm not a victim." "No." Her smile was sharp. "You're a weapon, and they just aimed you at their own heads." She pulled out her laptop, turned it around. Chloe's video. Sterling watched in silence. Watched himself be assaulted. Watched his own controlled reaction. Watched Miller's triumph. When it ended, Rossi said, "The waitress who sent this Chloe Peterson, she's terrified. Fired the next day. Thorne's people asking questions. If they find out she has this, she's under protection," Sterling said, FBI detail, as of last night. Rossi's eyebrows rose. "You work fast." "I've had practice." She closed the laptop. "Here's what we do. Federal civil rights lawsuit. We demand discovery, full personnel files on Miller Thorne, every officer in that precinct. We subpoena the city's legal department, get every settlement they've paid out in 10 years. And we make this so public, so visible, they can't bury it." "They'll fight." "Of course they'll fight. But Marcus," she leaned forward, "they're fighting a battle they've already lost. They just don't know it yet." Sterling stood, walked to the window. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly, "about why I moved here." Rossi waited. "I've been undercover most of the last 15 years. Deep cover. Cartels, terror cells, organized crime. I've lived more lives than most people have nightmares. 6 months ago, I came home from my last assignment. Debriefed. Got my commendation. Got asked where I wanted to be stationed next." He turned to face her. "I told them I was done. I wanted peace. I wanted a place where I could drink my coffee and read my books and not think about who was trying to bill me." His voice hardened. "I moved to Crestwood Hills because it was supposed to be safe, the American dream, And on my 7th day here, a cop poured food on my head because he didn't like the color of my skin. The silence was absolute. So no, Sterling continued, I'm not just fighting this for me. I'm fighting because if it can happen to me, a federal agent with resources and training, then what happens to everyone else? What happens to Chloe Peterson? What happens to every person who can't fight back? Rossi's expression shifted. The calculating lawyer was gone, replaced by something raw. Then we burn them down, she said softly. All of them. And we build something better in the ashes. How long will it take? Depends how hard they fight. Could be months, could be years. Sterling shook his head. We don't have years. Every day this drags on is another day Miller and Thorne are out there with badges and guns doing this to someone else. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we don't fight this like a lawsuit. We fight it like a war. Rossi studied him. You have something in mind. I have everything in mind. His phone buzzed. Text from Evans. Situation heating up. Thorne knows you lawyered up. He's planning something. Be careful. Tonight. Me. Sterling showed Rossi the message. Her jaw tightened. They're going to escalate. That's what men like Thorne do when they're cornered. They double down. Good. Good? Sterling's smile was cold. The more they escalate, the more mistakes they make. And the more mistakes they make, the more ammunition we have. You sound like you want them to come after you. I don't want it, but I'm ready for it. He picked up his jacket. And when they do, we'll be waiting. But before he could leave, Rossi's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned, answered. Rossi. Her face went pale. When is she okay? Don't move. I'm sending people now. She hung up, looked at Sterling. That was my investigator. Chloe Peterson just called 911. Miller and Rizzo are at her apartment door right now, threatening her. Sterling was already moving toward the door phone to his ear. Chen, it's Sterling. Activate that protective detail. Now. Subject is under immediate threat. He rattled off Chloe's address from memory. Rossi grabbed her briefcase. I'm coming with you. No, you're staying here and documenting everything. If they touch her, if they even knock on that door wrong, I want every second recorded, filed, and ready for federal prosecution. Marcus? Trust me. This is what I do. He was out the door before she could argue. Chloe huddled in the corner of her apartment phone, propped against the bookshelf, recording. The pounding on her door had started 5 minutes ago. Chloe Peterson, Miller's voice boomed through the thin wood. We know you're in there. We just want to talk. Talk. She knew what that meant. We know about the video, Chloe. Rizzo's voice was smoother, more menacing. We know you sent it to that lawyer. You're making a big mistake. Career-ending mistake. Maybe worse. Her hands shook so hard she could barely hold the phone steady. Think about your future, Chloe. Think about your family. Miller's voice again. Accidents happen every day. The threat was clear. Unmistakable. Chloe's laptop was open, the secure chat line Rossi's investigator had set up glowing on the screen. She typed frantically, They're here. Miller and Rizzo at my door. They know about the video. Immediate reply, Stay calm. Don't open the door. We're on our way. Record everything. Yep. The phone was already recording, capturing every word, every threat. You have 30 seconds to open this door, Chloe, or we're coming in. Miller's voice had lost the fake friendly tone. Now it was pure menace. Chloe pressed herself against the wall, tears streaming down her face. Then she heard it. Sirens. Multiple sirens getting closer. The pounding stopped. Shit, Rizzo's voice panicked. Frank, we gotta go. We're not done here, Chloe, Miller's voice retreating. You remember that. We're not done. Footsteps running. 30 seconds later, the sirens cut off right outside her building. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Agent Chen, FBI. We're outside your door. You're safe now. Open up. Chloe stumbled to the door, looked through the peephole. 3 people in FBI windbreakers. Badges held up. Professional. Calm. She opened the door and collapsed into Agent Chen's arms, sobbing. You're safe, Chen said, her voice firm. They can't touch you now? You did the right thing, Chloe. You did the right thing. 20 minutes later, Sterling's phone rang. Chen. We got her. She's safe. And Marcus, she recorded the whole thing. Every threat. It's all on tape. Sterling closed his eyes, let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Good. Get her somewhere secure. Somewhere Thorne's people can't find her. Already done? Safe house in the federal building. Round-the-clock protection. Send me the audio file. Now. On its way. Sterling hung up, immediately called Rossi. "We have them," he said. Witness intimidation. On tape. Miller and Rizzo threatening a civilian witness to suppress evidence in a federal civil rights case. He could hear the smile in Rossi's voice. "That's a felony. Multiple felonies." "I know." "Marcus, with this, we don't just have a civil case anymore. We have criminal charges. Federal criminal charges." "I know." "We can bring down the whole department." "That's the plan." Silence on the line. "Then, when do you meet Evans?" "Tonight, 11 p.m. Shh. Be careful. If Thorne knows you're building a case if he suspects you're FBI, he's going to get desperate. And desperate men do desperate things. Let him get desperate. Desperate men make mistakes." But after he hung up, Sterling stood alone in his car staring at the city. Rossi was right. Desperate men were dangerous. And he was about to make Thorne very, very desperate. That night, Sterling drove to the parking garage at 10th and Main. Level 3 as instructed. The concrete structure was mostly empty at this hour. He parked in the shadows, killed the engine, waited. At 11:03, a sedan pulled in 2 spaces away. Mike Evans stepped out, looked around carefully, got into Sterling's passenger seat. He'd aged in 5 years. More gray. Deeper lines. The look of a man who'd been fighting a losing battle too long. "Marcus, good to see you. Wish it was under better circumstances." "Same." Evans pulled out a thick envelope, set it on the dashboard. "This is everything I could get without raising flags. Miller's real personnel file. Thorne's off-book communications with the mayor. Internal affairs complaints that were buried. Settlements paid with city money never reported to the council." Sterling opened it, skimmed the contents. Damning. Worse than he'd expected. "Jesus Christ, Mike. Yeah, it's bad. And it goes higher than Thorne. The mayor knows. City council knows. They've all been covering because it's politically convenient. Thorne keeps crime stats low by harassing minorities out of the neighborhood. Everyone campaigns on how safe Crestwood Hills is." "How long have you known?" Evans looked away. 2 years, maybe longer. I've been documenting trying to build a case, but every time I get close, something happens. Witnesses recant, evidence disappears, I get reassigned." "Why didn't you go to the feds?" "Because I'm a coward." Evans's voice was bitter. "Because I've got a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage and a pension 3 years away. Because I told myself I could do more good on the inside because I'm weak. You're here now. Because you're not weak. Because what happened to you, it was so blatant, so public, even I couldn't pretend anymore." He turned to Sterling. "If they can do that to an FBI agent in broad daylight, they can do it to anyone. If I don't help stop them now, I'm not just complicit, I'm guilty." Sterling closed the envelope. "This is enough. Combined with the video, with Chloe's testimony, with the intimidation recording, we can bury them. They're planning something," Evans said urgently. "I don't know what, but Thorne's been in closed-door meetings all day. He's panicking. When Thorne panics, people get hurt. Let me worry about that." "Marcus, I'm serious. These aren't just corrupt cops. They're dangerous. Miller's got friends in dark places. If they can't beat you in court, they'll try another way." Sterling met his eyes. "Mike, I've been shot at by cartel hit squads in Juarez. I've had a building blown up with me in it in Kandahar. I've had a terrorist put a gun to my head and pull the trigger, it misfired. If Frank Miller wants to come at me, he's welcome to try." Evans managed a weak smile. "You really aren't scared of them?" "I'm terrified of what they represent, but of them personally, no." They sat in silence. 2 men who'd chosen different paths to the same destination. "What happens now?" Evans asked. "Now we wait. Rossi files the lawsuit tomorrow. It'll be public by afternoon. And then all hell breaks loose." "Exactly." Evans opened the door, paused. "Marcus, thank you for giving me the chance to do the right thing, even if it's too late." "It's never too late, Mike." Evans drove away. Sterling sat alone in the darkness. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. Some things once broken stayed broken. Some stains never washed out. The question wasn't whether justice could be done. The question was whether justice could ever be enough. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "We know who you are. We know what you're doing. Back off or you'll regret it. A friend." Sterling stared at the message, then smiled. Cold, hard. They'd just shown their hand, revealed they were panicking, made their first real mistake. He forwarded the text to Rossi and Chen with one word, evidence. Then he typed a reply to the unknown number. "Tell Thorne I'm not backing off. Tell him I'm coming for all of you, and tell him he should have thought about that before he poured food on my head. Marcus Sterling, FBI. He hit send. Then he started his engine and drove home, through the quiet streets of Crestwood Hills. Tomorrow the war would go public. Tomorrow Thorne's empire would start to crumble. Tomorrow the reckoning would begin. But tonight Marcus Sterling allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, because for the first time since he'd moved to this town, since he'd been humiliated in that diner, since he'd felt the weight of prejudice and corruption pressing down on him, he wasn't the one who was afraid. They were. And they should be. Because what Miller and Thorne didn't know, what they were about to find out the hard way, was that you don't humiliate a federal agent and walk away clean. You don't threaten witnesses and expect no consequences, and you sure as hell don't send threatening texts to a man who's taken down drug cartels and terror cells. Tomorrow morning, Isabella Rossi would hold a press conference that would blow this case wide open. Tomorrow afternoon, the video would go viral, millions of views in hours. And tomorrow night, Miller and Rizzo would make the final fatal mistake that would end their careers forever. But that's a story for the next part. The next morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Sterling woke at 5 a.m., went through his routine. Run, shower, coffee. But his mind was already 3 moves ahead, calculating angles, anticipating reactions. At 8:30 a.m., his phone rang. Rossi. "We're live in 30 minutes, she said. "Press conference, City Hall steps. Every major outlet confirmed." "Good. Marcus, once we do this, there's no going back. They'll come at us with everything. I'm counting on it." He could hear her smile through the phone. "See you there." Sterling dressed in his full FBI tactical uniform, something he rarely wore outside of operations. Black boots, dark pants, the unmistakable windbreaker with bright yellow letters across the back, FBI. He wanted Miller to see exactly who he'd assaulted. City Hall was already swarming with reporters when he arrived. Cameras everywhere. Microphones clustered like a bouquet of thorns. Rossi stood at the podium, waiting. She caught his eye as he approached, gave a slight nod. Then she began. "Good morning. My name is Isabella Rossi, and I'm here representing Marcus Sterling in a federal civil rights lawsuit against Officer Frank Miller, Chief David Thorne, and the entire 14th Precinct of Crestwood Hills." The cameras flashed like lightning. 6 days ago, Mr. Sterling, a decorated FBI agent and 15-year veteran of federal law enforcement, was assaulted by Officer Miller in a public establishment. The assault was racially motivated, unprovoked, and captured on video. She paused, letting that sink in. The police department then engaged in a systematic cover-up, falsifying reports, intimidating witnesses, and destroying evidence. Last night, Officer Miller and Officer Rico Rizzo threatened a civilian witness in her own home, attempting to suppress evidence in this case. The murmur from the press grew louder. "We have video of the assault. We have audio of the witness intimidation. We have documented proof of a pattern of misconduct spanning years, and we are filing federal charges today." A reporter shouted, "Can we see the video?" Rossi gestured to a screen behind her. "Yes, you can." The screen lit up. Chloe's video played. Even though it was grainy, shaky, partially obscured, the content was devastating. Miller's voice, "You people don't belong here." Sterling's calm response, "I'm a resident of Crestwood Hills, officer, just like you." The sound of the plate dumping, the collective gasp, Sterling's final words, "You just made the biggest mistake of your entire life." The reporters erupted, questions flying from every direction. "Agent Sterling, can you comment?" Sterling stepped to the microphone. His presence alone silenced them. "My name is Marcus Sterling. I'm a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. For the past 15 years, I've worked undercover operations against drug cartels, terror cells, and organized crime." He let that hang. 6 days ago, I was assaulted by a police officer for the crime of being black in an expensive shirt sitting in a booth in a public diner. The officer poured food on my head, filed a false report, and then attempted to intimidate the witness who recorded his crime. His voice never rose, never wavered, but the intensity was palpable. "This isn't about me. This is about every person who doesn't have a badge, who doesn't have resources, who doesn't have the ability to fight back. If this can happen to a federal agent, what happens to everyone else?" A reporter called out, "What do you want to happen to Officer Miller?" Sterling's eyes were cold. "I want justice. Real justice. Not a paid suspension, not a quiet settlement. I want accountability." Another reporter. "Chief Thorne issued a statement calling these allegations baseless. He says you're trying to destroy good officers' reputations." Sterling's jaw tightened. "Chief Thorne has been covering up police misconduct for years. We have the documentation, we have the pattern, and before this is over, the entire country will see it." The press conference lasted another 20 minutes. Every major news outlet picked it up. By noon, the video had 3 million views. By 2 p.m., it was trending nationally. By 4 p.m., the mayor's office issued a statement calling for an independent investigation. By 6 p.m., Officer Frank Miller's life as he knew it was over. Miller sat in his living room curtains, drawn phone. Phone buzzing nonstop with calls he wouldn't answer. The TV was on, every channel showing his face, his sneer, his voice saying, "You people," over and over and over. His wife had left that morning, taken the kids to her mother's. Didn't say when she'd be back. Maybe never. His phone rang again. This time he answered. "Frank, it's Thorne. Don't talk to anyone. Don't leave your house. Don't do anything. We're handling this." "Handling this? David, I'm on every news station in the country. They're calling me a racist. They're calling me a criminal." "Because you are a racist and you might be a criminal," Thorne snapped. "But that doesn't mean we can't manage this. Just stay quiet. Let our lawyers work." "Our lawyers? What about me? What about my career?" "Your career is the least of our problems right now, Frank. Sterling's FBI. Do you understand what that means? We didn't just assault some random guy. We assaulted a federal agent. And now he's got documentation video witnesses. We're not fighting a lawsuit anymore. We're fighting federal charges." Miller felt his chest tighten. Federal charges. Violation of civil rights under color of law, witness intimidation, conspiracy to obstruct justice. If they make these stick, Frank, you're not losing your job. You're going to prison. The line went dead. Miller sat there, phone in his hand, staring at his own face on the television. 24 hours ago, he'd been untouchable, protected, above the law. Now he was the most hated cop in America. His doorbell rang. He didn't move. It rang again, then pounding. "Frank Miller, FBI, open the door." Miller's blood went cold. He walked to the door, on shaking legs, opened it. 3 agents stood there, Badges out. Behind them, 2 more agents and a forensics van. "Frank Miller, you're under arrest for violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, and Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1512, witness tampering." The agent was reading him his rights, but Miller barely heard it. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Cold, final. As they led him to the car, he saw his neighbors watching from their windows, some with phones out recording. One woman he'd known for 10 years looked at him with pure disgust. The agent put a hand on Miller's head, guided him into the back seat. Through the window, Miller saw Sterling standing across the street, arms crossed, watching. Their eyes met. Sterling didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just stood there, a silent reminder that every action had a consequence. The car pulled away. Miller closed his eyes. 24 hours ago, he'd poured food on a man's head and laughed about it. Now his life was over. Thorne watched the arrest on the news from his office, his hands shaking with rage. Miller had been stupid, sloppy, arrogant. But Thorne was smarter. He'd been building his empire for 30 years. He wasn't going down because of one idiot cop and one uppity federal agent. He picked up his phone, dialed a private number. "It's Thorne. We have a problem. I need it taken care of." The voice on the other end was calm, professional. "What kind of problem?" "The FBI agent, Sterling. He's building a case that could bring down the entire department. I need him. Discouraged." "Discouraged how?" "Use your imagination. Just make it look like an accident." Silence. Then, "That's a federal agent. The price just tripled." "I don't care about the price. I care about results." "It'll take a few days to set up." "You have 48 hours. Thorne hung up, leaned back in his chair. Sterling thought he'd won. Thought he'd brought down the corrupt system with his press conference and his videos and his righteous indignation. He had no idea how deep the rot went, or how far Thorne was willing to go to protect it. Sterling knew the arrest wouldn't be the end. Men like Thorne didn't fold after one loss. They escalated. They got desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. He was sitting in his car outside the federal building when his phone rang. Evans. "Marcus, we need to talk. Now. It's urgent." "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. Same place as last night. 20 minutes. The line went dead. Sterling's instincts flared. Evans sounded panicked. That wasn't like him. He drove to the parking garage, every sense on high alert. Evans was already there, pacing next to his car. The moment Sterling pulled in, Evans practically ran over. "Get in my car, now." Sterling hesitated. "Mike, what's going on?" "Just get in, please." Sterling complied. The moment his door closed, Evans started talking fast. "Thorne made a call this morning. I was in the hallway outside his office. I heard him through the door." "What kind of call?" The kind where he's hiring someone to kill you." The words hung in the air. Sterling's expression didn't change, but his mind was already working. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He said discouraged. But we both know what that means. He wants you gone, Marcus, and he's got the connections to make it happen." "Who'd he call to... I don't know. He used a burner phone. But Marcus, if Thorne's desperate enough to order a hit on a federal agent, he's got nothing left to lose. That makes him more dangerous than ever." Sterling pulled out his phone, sent a quick encrypted text to Chen at the bureau. "Potential threat. Need immediate surveillance on Chief Thorne. All communications." Response came back in seconds. "Already on it. We picked up chatter an hour ago. Stay alert." Sterling looked at Evans. "You're in danger too now. If Thorne knows you're talking to me..." "I know. That's why I'm done hiding." Evans reached into his jacket, pulled out a small USB drive. "This is everything. Every file I've collected over 2 years. Financial records showing Thorne taking bribes, communications with organized crime figures, evidence of drug trafficking protection schemes. Marcus, this goes way beyond police brutality. Thorne's been running a criminal enterprise out of the 14th precinct." Sterling took the drive, felt the weight of it. "This is enough to bring RICO charges. It's enough to bring down half the city government. The mayor's implicated, 3 city council members, 2 judges." Evans's hands were shaking. "I've been terrified of this for 2 years, but watching what they did to you, watching them try to destroy that girl Chloe, I can't be afraid anymore. Mike, once we use this, your life changes. You'll be a witness in a federal case. You'll be testifying against your own department." "I know." Evans met his eyes. "But I didn't become a cop to protect criminals with badges. I became a cop to protect people. And right now, the people need protection from my own department." Sterling gripped his shoulder. "You're a good man, Mike. I'm a coward who waited too long, but maybe it's not too late to do the right thing." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sterling's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You've been warned. Last chance. Drop the case or suffer the consequences." Sterling showed it to Evans. "They're coming after you tonight," Evans said. "I can feel it." "Good. Let them come. Marcus, you can't fight this alone." "I'm not alone." Sterling opened his phone, made a call. "Chen, it's Sterling. I need the tactical response team at my location. Full gear. We have a credible threat against a federal agent." He gave the address. "They'll be there in 30 minutes, Chen said. "Marcus, maybe you should come to the federal building. It's safer." "No, if they're coming for me, I want them to come, and I want to be ready." He hung up, looked at Evans. "Go home, Mike. Get your family somewhere safe. This is about to get ugly." "What are you going to do?" Sterling's smile was cold. "I'm going to set a trap, and when Thorne's people walk into it, I'm going to make sure they never walk out." Sterling drove home as the sun set, painting Crestwood Hills in shades of gold and crimson. Beautiful neighborhood, beautiful houses, beautiful lies covering ugly truths. He pulled into his driveway, killed the engine, sat for a moment. His training told him to be cautious. His instincts told him tonight would be the night. He went inside, didn't turn on any lights. Moved through the house in darkness, just checking sightlines, defensive positions, escape routes. Then he went to the basement to his real office behind the false wall. He pulled up the security system cameras he'd installed throughout the property the day he'd moved in. Infrared sensors, motion detectors, the works. If anyone came within 100 yards of his house, he'd know. His phone buzzed. "Chen. Team is in position. 2 agents in a van 2 blocks north. 2 more in a house across the street. Sniper on the roof of the building behind you. You're covered." "Good. Tell them to hold position unless I give the word." "Marcus, if someone comes after you." "If someone comes after me, I want them taken alive. I want them to talk. I want them to give up Thorne. And if they don't come, they'll come. Thorne's too desperate to wait. He thinks I'm vulnerable. He thinks one hired gun can solve his problem." Sterling checked his own weapon, chambered around. He's about to learn how wrong he is. He settled into his chair, eyes on the monitors, and waited. 9 p.m. came and went. Nothing. 10 p.m. Still nothing. At 10:47, the infrared sensors picked up movement. One figure approaching from the east side of the property, moving slow, careful, professional. Sterling's pulse didn't quicken. This was what he'd been trained for, what he'd done for 15 years. He keyed his radio. "Chen, I have one hostile approaching east perimeter. Hold your position. Let him get close." "Copy that. We have him on thermal. Male, approximately 6'2", carrying what looks like a long rifle." Sniper. Thorne had sent a sniper. Sterling moved through his house in complete darkness, muscle memory guiding him. He'd memorized every corner, every angle. He reached the east window, peered out through the curtain. The figure was in his backyard now, taking position behind the large oak tree, setting up the rifle. Sterling could take him now, could call in the team, have him arrested. But he wanted more than an arrest. He wanted proof. He wanted the shooter to talk, to give up Thorne, to break the entire chain of corruption. He keyed the radio again. Chen, when I give the signal, I need lights. Full illumination. I want him blinded and disoriented. Standing by. Sterling moved to the back door, weapon drawn, waiting. The sniper was settling into position, adjusting his scope. Sterling counted down in his head. 3, 2, 1. He kicked open the back door, shouted, FBI, drop your weapon. The sniper spun rifle coming up. Now Chen floodlights erupted from every direction, the FBI van, the neighboring house, portable units the team had positioned. The backyard turned into daylight. The sniper was blinded, stumbling. Sterling had him in his sights. Drop it now. For a second, the sniper hesitated. Then he made his choice. He dropped the rifle, raised his hand. FBI agents swarmed from every direction, tackling him to the ground, cuffing him. Sterling walked over, looked down at the man. Who sent you? The sniper said nothing. You just attempted to assassinate a federal agent. That's life in prison, no parole, no deals, unless you talk. Still nothing. Sterling crouched down. Let me explain something to you. Chief Thorne, he's going down. The only question is whether you go down with him or whether you help yourself by cooperating. The sniper's jaw tightened. I want a lawyer. You'll get one. But ask yourself, do you really want to spend the rest of your life in federal prison, protecting a corrupt cop who's about to lose everything anyway? He stood up, nodded to Chen. Get him processed, and get a warrant for Thorne's arrest. Conspiracy to commit murder of a federal officer. I want him in custody tonight. Chen smiled. Already drafted. Judge signed it 10 minutes ago. Team's moving on him now. Sterling looked at his watch. 11:03 p.m. Somewhere across town, Thorne was about to have a very bad night. Does it? Thorne was in his den, whiskey in hand, waiting for the call that would tell him Sterling was dead. When his doorbell rang at 11:15, he thought maybe it was his contact coming in person. He opened the door. 20 FBI agents stood there, their weapons drawn. David Thorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, violation of civil rights, under color of law, obstruction of justice, and racketeering. Thorne's face went white. This is ridiculous. I'm the chief of police. You can't... We can and we are. The lead agent stepped forward. You hired someone to kill a federal agent. He's in custody. He's talking. And you're done. They cuffed him right there in his doorway in his own neighborhood in front of his neighbors who came out to watch. The mighty Chief Thorne, architect of corruption, protector of criminals, being led away in handcuffs like a common thug. As they put him in the car, he saw Sterling standing at the end of his driveway, just standing there watching. Thorne tried to summon some rage, some defiance, but all he felt was fear. Because he'd underestimated Sterling from the beginning. Thought he was just another victim. Another problem to be managed. He'd been wrong. Sterling wasn't a victim. He was a reckoning. The next morning, Sterling stood in the conference room at FBI headquarters watching the interrogation through one-way glass. The sniper, identified as Marcus Kane, a former military contractor with a long list of questionable jobs, sat across from two agents. He'd been talking for 3 hours, and what he was saying was devastating. Thorne hired me 6 months ago for a different job. Some witness who was about to testify in a corruption case. Made it look like a suicide. The agent leaned forward. Who was the witness? Name was Rodriguez, Carlos Rodriguez. He was going to expose the whole drug protection scheme. Sterling's jaw clenched. He remembered that case. Rodriguez's death had been ruled a suicide, but there had always been questions. Now they had answers. Kane kept talking. Thorne's been doing this for years. He's got connections to 3 different organized crime families. They pay him protection money, he looks the other way on their operations. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, as long as they stay out of the nice neighborhoods, Thorne doesn't care. And if someone threatens to expose it, they disappear, accident, suicide, overdose. Thorne's got a dozen ways to make problems go away. The agent slid a photo across the table. Evans's photo. What about this man, Detective Michael Evans? Kane studied it. Don't know him. He's been investigating Thorne for 2 years, collecting evidence. Kane's eyes widened slightly. Then he's lucky he's still alive. If Thorne knew he'd be dead already. Sterling pulled out his phone, called Evans immediately. Mike, where are you? Home. Why? What's wrong? Get out. Right now. Take your family and go to the federal building. Don't pack, don't stop, just go. Marcus, Thorne's had people killed before Mike. If he even suspects you're the leak, you're in danger. Move, now. Evans must have heard the urgency because he didn't argue. Okay, we're leaving now. Sterling hung up, turned to Chen. I want protective custody for Evans and his family. Full security. Already arranged. Sterling watched Kane through the glass, still talking, still giving up names, locations, operations. This was bigger than anyone had realized. Thorne wasn't just a corrupt cop. He was a crime boss with a badge, and they'd barely scratched the surface. Chen stood next to Sterling. This is going to be a long investigation. I know. Could take months, maybe years. You prepared for that? Sterling thought about the diner. The food dripping down his face. The humiliation. The rage he'd kept buried under iron control. I came to Crestwood Hills for peace, he said quietly. I wanted to be done with this life. Done with the violence and the corruption and the constant fight. He turned to look at Chen. But they wouldn't let me. They saw me as a threat just for existing. So, if it takes years to tear down everything Thorne built, then that's what it takes. Because the next person who moves here, the next person who's different, who doesn't fit their narrow definition of belonging, they deserve better than what I got. Chen nodded. Then let's get to work. They spent the next 6 hours building the case. Kane's testimony led to warrants. Warrants led to raids. Raids led to arrests. By midnight, they'd arrested 15 people, cops, city officials, organized crime figures. By dawn, the number was 23. The 14th precinct was in chaos. Half the command staff in custody, the other half lawyering up. The mayor held a press conference at 7 a.m. looking haggard and terrified, announcing the appointment of a federal monitor to oversee the entire police department. Rossi called Sterling at 8 a.m. Have you seen the news? I've been watching. Marcus, we did it. We actually did it. We brought down the entire corrupt system. We haven't finished yet. What do you mean, Thorne's just the head. There's still the body, all the cops he protected, all the officials he paid off, all the criminals he enabled. This is going to take time. But we have time now. We have momentum. We have public support. She paused. And we have you. Sterling looked out his window at the rising sun over Crestwood Hills. I hope so. 3 days later, Sterling sat in a courtroom watching Miller's arraignment. The man looked broken, hollow. Nothing like the swaggering bully who'd poured food on his head. The judge read the charges. Deprivation of rights under color of law, false imprisonment, filing a false police report, witness intimidation. How do you plead? Miller's lawyer started to speak, but Miller cut him off. Guilty. His voice was barely above a whisper. I plead guilty to all of it. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Miller, do you understand what you're saying? I understand. Miller looked up, and for the first time since the arrest, he looked directly at Sterling. I understand that I was wrong, that I abused my power, that I hurt innocent people because I could, because no one stopped me, because Chief Thorne protected me. He took a shaky breath. I'm guilty, and I deserve whatever punishment you give me. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was accountability. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks. As they led Miller away, he passed Sterling in the aisle. I'm sorry, Miller said. Not loud, not performative, just 2 words heavy with meaning. Sterling didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Sorry didn't undo the assault, didn't erase the humiliation, didn't fix the broken system that had enabled men like Miller for decades. But it was a start. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sterling pushed through them, no comment, no statement. He just wanted to go home. But as he reached his car, he saw Chloe Peterson waiting by the driver's side door. She looked better, less terrified. The FBI protection had done her good. Agent Sterling? She said. I just wanted to say thank you for protecting me, for believing me. You did the brave thing, Chloe. You recorded the truth when everyone else looked away. I was so scared, her voice cracked. I almost deleted that video a dozen times. Almost convinced myself it wasn't worth it. But you didn't. No, because of you, because I saw how you handled that moment in the diner. You didn't fight back, you didn't lose control, you just endured and promised justice. She wiped her eyes. You gave me the courage to do the same. Sterling felt something in his chest loosen, something he hadn't realized was tight. What will you do now? He asked. Finish school, maybe become a lawyer myself. She smiled, Seems like we need more people fighting for justice." "We do." She walked away and Sterling got in his car. He drove through Crestwood Hills past the diner where it all started, past the precinct that was now crawling with federal investigators, past the perfect houses on perfect streets that had hidden so much ugliness. And for the first time since he'd moved here, he felt something close to peace. Not because the fight was over, but because the fight had meant something. Because one man standing up had led to a young woman standing up, which led to a good cop standing up, which led to an entire corrupt system coming down. That night, Sterling sat in his corner booth at the diner, reopened under new management, renamed Cleaned Up. He ordered coffee and opened his leather-bound book. The waitress, a new girl young and nervous, brought his cup. "Anything else, sir?" Sterling looked up at her, really looked. Saw the way she held herself, careful and respectful, but not fearful. "No thank you, this is perfect." She smiled and walked away. Sterling returned to his book. Outside, the sun was setting over Crestwood Hills. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus Sterling felt like he was finally home. But peace, Sterling was learning, was a fragile thing. 2 weeks after Miller's guilty plea, Sterling's phone rang at 2 a.m. He answered on the first ring, already awake, already alert. "Sterling? It's Chen. We have a problem, a big one." After Sterling sat up. "Talk to me." Kane recanted his testimony, all of it. Says he was coerced, that we threatened him, that everything he said about Thorne was a lie. Sterling's blood went cold. "That's impossible. We have him on tape. Hours of detailed testimony." "I know, but his new lawyer, some hotshot from New York, is filing motions to suppress everything. Claims we violated his rights during interrogation." "Who's the lawyer, slick?" "Martin Cross. Ever heard of him, Courtroom?" Sterling had. Cross was a fixer, the kind of attorney who specialized in making evidence disappear and witnesses change their stories. He was expensive. Very expensive. "Someone paid for Cross, that," Sterling said. "Kane couldn't afford him on his own." "That's what we figured, but we can't prove who." "Yes, we can. Follow the money. Cross doesn't work for free." "Already on it. But Marcus, if Kane's testimony gets thrown out, we lose half our case against Thorne. The racketeering charges, the conspiracy charges, they all depend on Kane's statements." Sterling was already getting dressed, phone pressed to his ear. "What about the physical evidence, the payments Kane received, the communications, judge?" "Circumstantial. Good, but not enough without his testimony. Thorne's lawyers are going to argue Kane was just a lone actor, that Thorne had nothing to do with the attempted hit on you." "That's bullshit and everyone knows it." "Knowing it and proving it are two different things." Chen paused. "We need Kane to stick to his original story, or we need another witness." Sterling grabbed his keys. "I'm coming in." "Marcus, it's 2 a.m. "I don't care. Someone got to Kane. Someone with enough money and connections to hire Martin Cross. We need to find out who before this whole case falls apart." He hung up and drove through empty streets to the federal building. Chen was waiting in the conference room, files spread across the table, looking exhausted. "Where's Kane now?" Sterling asked. "County lockup. Protective custody. We can't get to him. Cross has him locked down tight." Sterling studied the files. When did Cross take the case? 3 days ago. Filed his appearance, immediately requested a meeting with Kane, and the next day, Kane recants. So Cross got to him, promised him something. Money protection, reduced sentence. Or threatened him, Chen added. Cross has connections to some very dangerous people. Maybe Kane's more afraid of them than he is of us. Sterling's mind was racing. What about Kane's family? Does he have anyone? Chen flipped through a file. Ex-wife in Nevada, one daughter age 16, lives with the mother. Contact them. Make sure they're safe. If someone's threatening Kane, they might go after his family. Already done. Bureau has them under surveillance. Sterling leaned back, thinking. They were being outmaneuvered. Someone with resources was systematically dismantling their case. His phone buzzed. Text from Evans. Need to talk. Important. Can't do it over phone. Meet me at the usual place. 6 a.m.? Sterling showed it to Chen. Something's wrong. Evans sounds scared. You think he's in danger? I think everyone connected to this case is in danger. Sterling stood. I'm going to meet him. Keep digging into Cross. Find out who's paying him. That's our thread. Be careful, Marcus. If they got to Kane, they might come for you next. Let them try. Sterling left the building as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. He drove to the parking garage, arrived 30 minutes early, swept the area for threats. At exactly 6 a.m., Evans pulled in. But he wasn't alone. 2 other men were with him. Sterling's hand moved to his weapon. Then he recognized them. Detective James Walsh and Detective Lisa Torres, both from the 14th Precinct. both on Evan's list of clean cops. Evans got out first, hands visible. "It's okay, Marcus. They're with us." Sterling relaxed slightly, but stayed alert. "What's going on?" Walsh stepped forward. He was in his 50s, graying with the weathered look of a cop who'd seen too much. "Agent Sterling, we need your help, and we need it fast." "I'm listening." Torres spoke next. She was younger, early 30s, intense eyes. "We've been investigating Thorne separately from Evans for the past year. We knew he was dirty, but we couldn't prove it. Couldn't get close enough. Until now," Walsh added. "Kane's recantation, it's not just about protecting Thorne. It's about protecting someone bigger." Sterling's attention sharpened. "Who so?" "Deputy Mayor Richard Vance." Evans pulled out a tablet, showed Sterling a series of photos. "We've been watching him for months. He's been meeting with known organized crime figures, taking payments, and 3 days ago he met with Martin Cross." The pieces clicked into place. "Vance hired Cross to get Kane to recant," Sterling said. "More than that," Torres said. "Vance has been Thorne's puppet master for years. Thorne thought he was running the show, but Vance was pulling the strings. The drug protection schemes, the witness intimidation, the murders, Vance authorized all of it." Walsh handed Sterling a USB drive. "We've got financial records, shell companies, offshore accounts. Vance has been laundering money through the police department, millions of dollars. Thorne was just his enforcer." Sterling looked at the three detectives. They'd risked everything to bring this to him. "Why come to me?" he asked. "Why not go to the FBI directly?" "Because we don't know who we can trust," Evans said. "Vance has connections everywhere. FBI District Attorney's Office, State Police. If we go through normal channels, he'll find out, and the evidence disappears." "But you," Torres said, "you're an outsider. You already brought down Thorne. You have credibility. If you take this to your people, they'll listen." Sterling took the drive. "What's on here?" "Everything," Walsh said. "Bank records showing payments from organized crime to Vance's shell companies, communications between Vance and Cross, and a recording Vance talking to Cross about getting Kane to recant." "You recorded Vance?" "We got lucky. Vance was sloppy. Met Cross in a restaurant we had under surveillance for a different case. Audio's not perfect, but it's clear enough." Sterling felt the weight of the drive in his hand. This was it. This was the key to everything. If this is real, if we can verify it, Vance goes down, and the entire corruption network collapses. "It's real," Evans said. "We've been living with this for a year, afraid to move, afraid to trust anyone. But watching what you did, how you stood up to Miller, how you built this case piece by piece, you gave us hope that maybe the system could work." Sterling looked at each of them. These were good cops trapped in a bad system, and they'd chosen to fight. "Okay," he said. "I'll take this to Chen. We'll verify everything and move fast. But you three need protection. If Vance finds out you're the leak..." "We're ready for that," Torres said. "We knew the risks when we started this." "Then let's end it." Sterling drove straight back to the federal building. By 7 a.m., he had Chen and a team of forensic accountants analyzing the drive. By 9 a.m., they'd verified the bank records. By 11 a.m., they'd authenticated the recording. By 1 p.m., they had a federal warrant for Deputy Mayor Richard Vance's arrest. But when the FBI arrived at his office, Vance was gone. His secretary said he'd left an hour ago for lunch and hadn't returned. His phone went straight to voicemail. His house was empty. Richard Vance had run. Chen called Sterling immediately. He knew. Somehow he knew we were coming. "We have a leak," Sterling said, and the realization hitting hard. Someone tipped him off. Who? The only people who knew were our team and those three detectives. Sterling's mind raced. Evans, Walsh, Torres. He'd trusted them. They'd risked everything. But what if that was the play? What if one of them was working for Vance? "We need to bring them in," Sterling said. "Now, question them separately. Find out who talked." "Already dispatched agents, but Marcus, if Vance ran, he's got a head start. He could be out of the country by tonight." "Then we find him. Put alerts on every airport, train station, border crossing. Contact Interpol. I don't care if he runs to the moon, we bring him back." But even as he said it, Sterling knew it wouldn't be that simple. Men like Vance didn't run without a plan. He had resources, connections, safe houses. He could disappear for years if he wanted to, unless they gave him a reason to come back. Sterling's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Sterling?" "Agent Sterling. This is Richard Vance." Sterling froze, gestured frantically to Chen to start tracing the call. "Mr. Vance, we've been looking for you. "I'm sure you have." Vance's voice was smooth, confident. "I wanted to thank you, actually. You've made quite a mess of my operation." It's over, Vance. We have everything. The bank records, the recordings, the witnesses. You're done. Vance laughed. Am I? Because from where I'm sitting, I'm free and you're holding a bag of circumstantial evidence that any decent lawyer will tear apart. We'll find you. Maybe, maybe not. But here's the thing, Agent Sterling. You cost me a lot of money. A lot of careful planning. Years of work. And I don't take kindly to that. Sterling's grip tightened on the phone. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You see, I know where you live. I know your routines. I know you drink coffee every morning at that little diner, the one where all this started. Vance paused. I know about Isabella Rossi, about Detective Evans, about that sweet girl Chloe Peterson. I know about everyone you care about. If you touch any of them, you'll what? What, arrest me? You have to find me first. And while you're looking, well, accidents happen, don't they? People get hurt. Buildings catch fire. Cars crash. We'll protect them. You can't protect everyone, Agent Sterling, not all the time, and I'm a patient man. I can wait. The line went dead. Chen looked up from his computer. Got a location. Call came from a burner phone in Newark, but he's probably already ditched it. Sterling was already moving. Get protective details on Rossi, Evans, Chloe Walsh, and Torres, 24/7 coverage, and I want every asset we have looking for Vance. Use facial recognition, credit card tracking, everything. Marcus, he's trying to bait you, make you emotional, make you sloppy. I know, but he's also right. I can't protect everyone, which means we need to catch him. Fast. For the next 72 hours, Sterling barely slept. The FBI mobilized every resource, but Vance was a ghost. No credit card usage, no phone calls, no sightings. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. On the third day, Sterling got a call from Rossi. Marcus, we have a problem. Kane's recantation worked. Judge threw out his testimony. Thorne's lawyers are filing to dismiss the racketeering charges. Sterling closed his eyes. When's the hearing? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. If the judge grants the motion, Thorne walks on the major charges. He'll still face the assault and false report charges, but those are misdemeanors. He might get probation. That's not justice. I know, but without Kane's testimony, we don't have enough for the bigger charges. Sterling hung up and stared at the wall. Everything they'd built was crumbling. Vance was in the wind. Kane had recanted. Thorne was about to walk, and somewhere out there, people Sterling cared about were in danger. His phone rang again. Evans. Marcus, we might have something. Walsh has a contact in the organized crime unit, says there's chatter about a meeting, big players, tomorrow night. What kind of meeting? The kind where bosses divide up territory after a power vacuum. With Thorne gone and Vance missing, the criminal organizations are reorganizing. And word is Vance is going to be there. One last meeting to cash out his stake before he disappears for good. Sterling felt a surge of hope. Where? That's the problem. We don't know yet. But Walsh's contact says he can find out. For a price. How much? $50,000. Cash? Sterling didn't hesitate. Tell him we'll pay, but I want the location, the time, and confirmation that Vance will be there. I'll make the arrangements. Sterling hung up and immediately called Chen. I need $50,000 in cash, unmarked bills, and I need it in 2 hours. What's going on? We have a shot at Vance, tomorrow night. One chance to grab him before he vanishes forever. Chen was quiet for a moment. Marcus, if this is a setup, it's a risk, but it's the only play we have left. Okay, I'll get the money, but I'm coming with you. No, if this goes sideways, I need someone on the outside who can put the pieces together. Marcus. That's an order, Chen. The next morning, Sterling sat in the courtroom watching Thorne's lawyer argue for dismissal of the major charges. The lawyer was smooth, confident, systematically attacking every piece of evidence. Your Honor, without Mr. Kane's testimony, which he has now recanted under oath, the government's case falls apart. There is no direct evidence linking my client to any conspiracy. The prosecution has built a house of cards, and now it's collapsing. The prosecutor fought back, but Sterling could see it wasn't enough. The judge was skeptical, asking pointed questions about the evidence. At noon, the judge called a recess. I'll issue my ruling at 2 p.m. Sterling stepped outside, found Evans waiting. Walsh got the location. Industrial warehouse in the Port District. Meetings at midnight. Vance will be there. How sure are we? Walsh's contact has never been wrong. He says this is solid. Sterling nodded. Okay, we move at midnight, but we do this carefully. If Vance suspects anything, he'll run and we'll never get another shot. They spent the afternoon planning. Small team, minimal equipment, in and out fast. At 2 p.m., Sterling was back in the courtroom when the judge returned. After careful consideration, I'm granting the motion to dismiss the racketeering and conspiracy charges. Without credible testimony linking Chief Thorne to the broader criminal enterprise, I cannot allow those charges to proceed. Thorne's lawyer smiled. Thorne himself looked relieved. The judge continued, however, the charges of assault, false imprisonment, and filing false reports remain. Mr. Thorne, you will stand trial on those charges next month. It was a partial victory at best. Thorne would face some consequences, but not the ones he deserved. Sterling left the courthouse feeling defeated. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd risked, and Thorne was getting away with the worst of it. But tonight he had a chance to make it right. At 11 p.m., Sterling met Evans, Walsh, and Torres at a staging point 3 blocks from the warehouse. FBI has the perimeter, Sterling said, but they're hanging back. We don't want to spook anyone. Our job is to confirm Vance is there, then call in the cavalry. What if something goes wrong? Torres asked. Then we improvise. But nobody plays hero. We're here to gather intel, not start a war. They moved out using shadows and cover to approach the warehouse. Through the grimy windows, Sterling could see figures inside, at least a dozen men. Some he recognized from FBI files, high-level, organized crime figures from 3 different families. And there in the center, talking and laughing like he didn't have a care in the world, was Richard Vance. Sterling keyed his radio. Chen, we have positive ID on Vance. He's here. Send in the teams. Copy that. Teams moving in. ETA 3 minutes. Sterling watched through the window. Vance was collecting something a briefcase passed to him by one of the crime bosses. Probably cash. His payout for years of protection and favors. 2 minutes passed. Sterling could hear the FBI vehicles approaching, trying to stay quiet. Then Vance's head snapped up. He said something to the men around him. They all tensed, reaching for weapons. Shit, Walsh whispered. They made us. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Men running, guns drawn. Vance heading for a back exit. Sterling didn't think. He burst through a side door, weapon up. FBI, nobody move. But they were already moving. Shots fired. Sterling dove behind a stack of crates as bullets chewed up the concrete around him. He heard Evans shouting into his radio. Officer down, we need backup now. Sterling glanced over. Torres was on the ground, clutching her shoulder. Walsh was dragging her to cover. More gunfire. The FBI teams were breaching the front entrance, flashbangs going off, smoke filling the air. Through the chaos, Sterling saw Vance reaching the back exit. He was going to escape. Again. Sterling ran, vaulting over debris, closing the distance. Vance turned, saw him coming, raised a pistol. Sterling was faster. He tackled Vance before he could fire, both of them crashing through the exit door into the alley outside. They hit the pavement hard. Vance's gun skittered away. Sterling pinned him, forearm across his throat. It's over, Vance. Vance laughed even as he struggled for breath. Over. This is just beginning. You think I'm the only one? You think taking me down changes anything? It changes things for the people you hurt, the people you used, the people you tried to silence. Noble words from a man who lives in a fantasy world. Vance's eyes were cold. There will always be someone like me. Someone willing to do what needs to be done. Someone who understands that power is the only thing that matters. Sterling tightened his grip. Then there will always be someone like me to stop them. FBI agents swarmed the alley. Chen was there, pulling Sterling off Vance, cuffing him. You're under arrest for racketeering, conspiracy, attempted murder, and about 20 other charges I'll enjoy reading to you. They hauled Vance to his feet. He looked at Sterling one last time. This isn't over between us. Yeah, Sterling said. It is. They took Vance away. Sterling leaned against the wall, adrenaline fading, exhaustion setting in. Chen walked over. Torres is okay. Bullet grazed her shoulder. She'll be fine. Good. We got 6 arrests inside, including 2 mob bosses who've been untouchable for years. Marcus, this is huge. It's not huge. It's just justice, finally. Sterling looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, Crestwood Hills was sleeping peacefully, unaware that the cancer eating away at it had just been cut out. Let's go home, he said. 2 weeks later, Sterling sat in the same courtroom watching a very different hearing. Richard Vance stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, his expensive suit and confident smile long gone. Mr. Vance, you've been charged with 23 federal crimes, including racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and corruption. How do you plead? Vance's lawyer whispered in his ear. Vance shook his head. Then, to everyone's surprise, he said, "Guilty, Your Honor, to all charges." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Mr. Vance, do you understand the penalties you're facing? I do. Life in prison without possibility of parole, and you still wish to plead guilty. I do, but I have information. Information about corruption that goes beyond Crestwood Hills, beyond this state. I want to make a deal. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we've had preliminary discussions with Mr. Vance's counsel. In exchange for his full cooperation, we're prepared to recommend a reduced sentence. Sterling watched from the gallery. Vance was doing what criminals always did when cornered, trying to save himself by giving up others. But this time it might actually lead somewhere. Because if Vance's corruption went as deep as he claimed, this case wasn't ending. It was just beginning. The judge agreed to postpone sentencing pending Vance's cooperation. As they led him away, Vance looked directly at Sterling and nodded. Not a friendly nod, not a conciliatory one. An acknowledgement between adversaries that this round was over, but the war continued. Outside the courthouse, Sterling found Rossi waiting. Did you hear? She asked. Thorne changed his plea. Guilty. Took a deal for 8 years in federal prison. Good. And Miller's sentencing is next week. Prosecutors recommending 15 years. Sterling nodded. Justice. Delayed, but delivered. What about you? Rossi asked. What are you going to do now? Sterling thought about that. A month ago, he'd wanted peace. Wanted to be left alone. Wanted to drink his coffee and read his books and pretend the world wasn't full of men like Miller and Thorne and Vance. But that wasn't possible anymore. Because he'd seen what happened when good people did nothing. When systems rotted from within, when corruption was allowed to flourish. I'm going to keep fighting, he said, wherever the Bureau sends me next, whatever case comes across my desk. I'm going to keep fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. Rossi smiled. Good, because we're going to need you. This case opened a lot of doors, exposed a lot of corruption. There's going to be investigations for years. I know. And Marcus, thank you for being the kind of man who doesn't back down, who doesn't take the easy way out, who stands up even when it costs him. Sterling shook her hand. Then he walked to his car and drove back to Crestwood Hills one last time. He'd gotten word that morning. The Bureau was transferring him. New assignment, new city, new fight. He wouldn't be staying in the house on the hill, wouldn't be drinking coffee in that corner booth every morning. But before he left, there was one thing he needed to do. He drove to the cemetery where Carlos Rodriguez was buried. The witness Kane had killed on Vance's orders. The man whose death had been ruled a suicide. The man whose real story would finally be told. Sterling stood at the grave. I'm sorry I didn't get here sooner, he said quietly. But we got them. All of them. Vance, Thorne, Kane. They're going to pay for what they did to you. The wind rustled through the trees. I know it doesn't bring you back. I know justice doesn't undo the harm. But maybe it prevents the next harm. Maybe it saves the next person. He placed a hand on the headstone. Rest easy now. Your death meant something. It led us to the truth. Sterling walked back to his car. He had one more stop to make. The diner was busy when he arrived. He took his usual seat in the corner booth. The young waitress came over, smile. Coffee, sir. Please? She brought it. Sterling wrapped his hands around the warm cup and looked out at Main Street. 7 weeks ago, he'd sat in this exact spot and had his dignity stripped away by a bully with a badge. Now that bully was in prison. The corrupt chief who protected him was in prison. The puppet master pulling their strings was in prison, and Crestwood Hills was beginning to heal. The waitress came back. Anything else? Sterling looked at her name tag. Sarah. Sarah, do me a favor. Of course. If anyone ever treats you with disrespect, if anyone ever tries to use their power to hurt you or intimidate you, don't stay silent. Speak up. Record it. Tell someone. Because silence is what lets bad people win. She looked surprised but nodded. I will. I promise. Sterling left a $50 bill on the table for a $5 coffee. Then he walked out of the diner and drove away from Crestwood Hills. In his rearview mirror, he watched the town disappear. He'd come here looking for peace, and found a war. He'd come here hoping to escape his past, and instead confronted the ugliest parts of society. He'd come here as a man who just wanted to be left alone, and discovered he couldn't turn away from injustice. Not anymore. Not ever again. His phone rang. Chen. Marcus got your new assignment. Chicago field office, major corruption case. City councilman on the take. Sound familiar? Sterling allowed himself a small smile. Yeah, sounds perfect. When can you start? Sterling looked at the road ahead. Open, clear, full of possibility and danger, and the endless fight for justice in an imperfect world. I'm already on my way. He hung up and pressed the accelerator. Behind him, Crestwood Hills grew smaller. Ahead, another city, another fight, another chance to stand up for people who needed someone in their corner. Marcus Sterling had learned something important in that diner 7 weeks ago. He'd learned that you can't run from who you are. He was a fighter, a protector, a man who couldn't look away when he saw injustice. And he'd learned that sometimes the fight comes to you whether you want it or not. But when it does, you have a choice. You can look away, stay silent, protect yourself. Or you can stand up, speak out, fight back. Marcus Sterling had made his choice, and he'd keep making it again and again for as long as it took. Because that's what heroes do. Not because they want to, but because someone has to. And if not them, then who? If not now, then when? The road stretched out before him. Marcus Sterling drove into the sunset toward the next fight, the next injustice, the next person who needed someone to say, I see you, I believe you, and I will fight for you, always. But the road to Chicago never felt longer than it did that afternoon. Sterling had barely crossed the state line when his phone rang again. Not Chen this time, a number he didn't recognize, but the area code was familiar. Crestwood Hills. He almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail. His chapter there was closed, but instinct made him pick up. Sterling? Agent Sterling, this is Detective Walsh. We have a situation. A bad one. Sterling's grip tightened on the wheel. What happened? It's Evans. Someone got to him. He's in the hospital, critical condition. The world seemed to tilt. When, 2 hours ago, he was leaving the precinct getting into his car, someone came up behind him, stabbed him 3 times, left him bleeding in the parking lot. Sterling was already pulling off the highway, looking for the next exit to turn around. Is he going to make it? I don't know. He's in surgery now, but Marcus, whoever did this, they left a message, carved it into his car door, said this is what happens to rats. Sterling's blood turned to ice. Vance. That's what we're thinking, but Vance is in custody. He couldn't have ordered this from inside. He doesn't need to order it himself. He's got people on the outside, people who owe him, people who want to send a message to anyone thinking about cooperating with the feds. Walsh's voice cracked. Mike's got a wife, 2 kids. They're at the hospital right now, terrified. I'm turning around. I'll be there in 3 hours. Marcus, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Evans risked everything to help bring down Vance. If someone's targeting people who helped us, then I need to be there. He hung up and immediately called Chen. We have a problem. Evans was attacked. Someone's going after our witnesses. Jesus, is he alive? Barely. Chen, I need you to put protection on everyone connected to this case. Rossi, Chloe Walsh, Torres. Anyone who testified or helped us. Already on it. I'm dispatching teams now. Good, because whoever ordered this hit on Evans isn't going to stop. They're sending a message. Keep your mouth shut or this happens to you. Where are you? Heading back to Crestwood Hills. Marcus, your assignment in Chicago. Can wait. This is more important. He drove faster than he should have, mind racing. Evans had been one of the good ones. A cop who'd chosen conscience over comfort, who'd risked his career and his safety to do the right thing. And now he was paying the price. Sterling arrived at Crestwood General Hospital just after 7 p.m. The parking lot was crawling with police, local, and FBI. Security was tight. He found Walsh in the surgical waiting room looking 10 years older than he had that morning. Any update? Sterling asked. Walsh shook his head. Still in surgery, lost a lot of blood. One of the stab wounds hit close to his heart. Sterling sat down heavily. Across the room, he could see Evan's wife Sarah holding their 2 daughters. The girls were crying. Sarah just stared at the wall shock written across her face. Has anyone talked to her? Sterling asked quietly. What's there to say? Her husband's fighting for his life because he tried to do the right thing. Walsh's voice was bitter. This job. This goddamn job. We tell ourselves we're the good guys, but look what happens to actual good guys. Before Sterling could respond, Torres rushed in her shoulder, still bandaged from the warehouse shootout. I just heard. Is Mike still in surgery? Walsh said. Torres slumped into a chair. This is my fault. I pushed him to go public with the evidence. If I'd just kept quiet, then Vance would still be running things and more people would get hurt, Sterling interrupted. Evans made his choice. He knew the risks. Did he? Torres looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. Did he really? Or did we all just tell ourselves that to feel better about putting targets on our backs? Sterling didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence for what felt like hours. Doctors came and went. Updates were minimal, touch and go, critical but stable, too early to tell. At 10 p.m., a surgeon finally emerged. Everyone stood. Mrs. Evans. Sarah rushed forward, daughters clutching her arms. Your husband is out of surgery. We were able to repair the damage to his chest cavity. The next 24 hours are crucial, but he's alive. Sarah collapsed into the doctor's arms, sobbing. Her daughters held her up. Sterling felt something loosen in his chest. Evans would live. at least for now. But as relief washed over him, another emotion quickly followed. Rage. Someone had tried to kill a good man for speaking the truth. Someone had sent a message written in blood, and Sterling was going to send one right back. He stepped outside, pulled out his phone, and called the one person who might have answers. Isabella Rossi answered on the first ring. "Marcus, I heard about Evans. How is he? He'll survive, but whoever did this needs to be stopped before they try again." "Agreed. I've been making calls all evening. Word on the street is this was ordered by someone inside Vance's organization, someone high up who's trying to maintain control now that Vance is locked up." "You have a name?" "Maybe. Anthony Marchetti. He's Vance's second-in-command. Ran the day-to-day operations while Vance played politician. FBI's had him under investigation for years, but could never make anything stick." Sterling knew the name. Marchetti was careful, ruthless. The kind of criminal who never got his hands dirty, but always got his way. "Where is he?" "Marcus, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking someone needs to have a conversation with Mr. Marchetti about the consequences of attacking federal witnesses." "That's not a conversation. That's a threat." "Good, because I want him to feel threatened. I want him to know that if anything happens to Evans to any of our witnesses, there will be consequences." Rossi was quiet for a moment. "He operates out of a social club in the old district, place called Roselli's. But Marcus, you can't just walk in there. It's enemy territory." "Watch me." "Wait, at least take backup." "I am backup." He hung up before she could argue. Sterling knew what he was about to do violated about a dozen protocols. He should call Chen, get a team together, do this by the book. But the book hadn't saved Evans from getting stabbed in a parking lot. The book hadn't stopped Vance's people from sending a message written in blood. Sometimes you had to send your own message. He drove to the old district, found Roselli's social club exactly where Rossi said it would be. Nondescript building, blacked out windows. 2 large men standing guard at the door. Sterling parked across the street and watched for 10 minutes. 3 men went in. No one came out. The guards checked IDs, patted people down. This was going to be interesting. Sterling stepped out of his car, checked his weapon, made sure his FBI badge was visible on his belt. Then he walked straight toward the door. The guards saw him coming, tensed up. One of them stepped forward, hand raised. "This is a private club, members only." Sterling showed his badge. "FBI, I need to speak with Anthony Marchetti." The guard's eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Marchetti doesn't take unscheduled meetings." "He'll take this one. Tell him it's about Michael Evans and attempted murder of a federal witness." The guards exchanged glances. One of them pulled out a phone, made a quick call, spoke in Italian too fast for Sterling to follow. After a minute, he hung up. "Mr. Marchetti says he doesn't know what you're talking about. Says you should leave before there's trouble." Sterling smiled. No warmth in it. "Tell Mr. Marchetti I'm not leaving. Tell him he has 2 choices. He can talk to me now here quietly, or he can talk to 20 FBI agents who'll raid this place in the next hour. His choice." Another phone call, more rapid Italian. The guard's expression changed. "Follow me?" They led Sterling inside. The club was dark smoke-filled, old-world Italian. Men in expensive suits sat at tables playing cards, drinking wine, conducting business in low voices. All conversation stopped when Sterling walked in. They led him to a back room where Anthony Marchetti sat behind an ornate desk, a glass of red wine in hand. He was in his 60s, silver hair, expensive suit, the look of a man who'd built an empire on other people's suffering. "Agent Sterling, I've heard a lot about you." "I wish I could say the same." Marchetti gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. Can I offer you wine?" "I'm not here for wine. I'm here about the attack on Detective Evans." "Terrible business. I heard about that. A shame what's happening to good police officers these days." "Cut the shit, Marchetti. We both know you ordered the hit." Marchetti's expression didn't change. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "I don't need proof. I need you to understand something. Evans is under FBI protection now. So is everyone else who helped bring down Vance. If anything happens to any of them, if they stub their toe, if they get a parking ticket, if they have a bad day, I'm coming for you." "Is that a threat, Agent Sterling?" "It's a promise. See, Vance thought he was untouchable, thought his connections and his money made him invincible. Where is he now, federal prison? Life sentence, no parole." Sterling leaned forward. "You're smart, Marchetti. Smarter than Vance, which means you know when to cut your losses. The old system is dead. Thorne's gone. Vance is gone. The protection you used to have, it doesn't exist anymore. So here's my advice. Walk away. Retire. Move to Florida. Because if you stay in this game, if you keep trying to intimidate witnesses, I will make it my personal mission to dismantle everything you've built. Marchetti took a slow sip of his wine. You have courage, Agent Sterling. Walking in here alone, making threats, but courage without wisdom is just foolishness. Maybe, but I've taken down bigger fish than you, and I'll do it again if I have to. They stared at each other. The silence stretched. Finally, Marchetti set down his wine glass. I had nothing to do with what happened to Detective Evans, but I'll make sure word gets out. No more attacks on your witnesses. You have my word. Your word means nothing to me. Then take it as a business decision. You're right, the old system is dying. Attacking federal witnesses brings too much heat. Bad for business. He stood, extended his hand. We have an understanding. Sterling didn't take the hand. We have an understanding. But if anything happens, you'll come for me. I heard you the first time. Marchetti smiled. You're an interesting man, Agent Sterling. Principled, honest, dangerous. The world doesn't produce many like you anymore. Good. Because the world doesn't need many, it just needs enough. Sterling walked out of the club past the silent men in suits, past the guards at the door. He didn't look back. He'd sent his message. Now he'd see if Marchetti was smart enough to listen. His phone rang the moment he got to his car. Chen. Marcus, where the hell are you? I've got agents saying you just walked into Marchetti's social club alone. News travels fast. Are you insane? Do you know what could have happened? Nothing happened. I had a conversation, set some boundaries. That's not how this works. We have protocols. Protocols didn't stop Evans from getting stabbed. Someone needed to send a message that we're not going to be intimidated. I sent it. Chen was quiet for a moment. Did it work? I guess we'll find out. Sterling drove back to the hospital. Evans was out of surgery, stable but unconscious. The doctor said he'd need weeks of recovery, maybe months. But he'd live. Sterling sat with Sarah and the girls for a while, not saying much. Just being present. Sometimes that was all you could do. At 2 a.m., Sarah finally convinced the girls to go home and sleep. Walsh and Torres had already left hours ago, exhausted. Sterling sat alone in the waiting room, coffee growing cold in his hand. His phone buzzed. Text from Chen. Chicago assignment is officially postponed. Bureau wants you to stay in Crestwood Hills until the Vance situation is fully resolved. You're being assigned as lead investigator on witness protection and cleanup operations. Sterling stared at the message. He'd tried to leave, tried to move on to the next fight, but this fight wasn't over. Not yet. He typed back, copy that. I'll need a team. Chen's response came immediately. Already being assembled. Report to field office tomorrow at 0800. Sterling pocketed his phone and looked around the empty waiting room. This place had seen so much pain, so many people waiting for news about loved ones, hoping for miracles, praying for second chances. Evans had gotten his second chance. But how many others wouldn't? The next morning, Sterling walked into the FBI field office in downtown Crestwood Hills. It was a temporary setup commandeered after the corruption scandal broke. The permanent office would take months to establish. Chen was waiting with a team of 6 agents. Sterling recognized 2 of them from the warehouse raid. Everyone, this is Special Agent Marcus Sterling. He'll be leading the witness protection and investigation wrap-up for the Vance case. Agent Sterling has final authority on all operational decisions. Sterling looked at the team. Young, eager professional. They'd been through the academy, gotten their certifications, learned the protocols. But protocols only got you so far. Here's the situation, Sterling began. We have 19 witnesses in the Vance case. 19 people who risked everything to help us bring down a corrupt system. One of them was attacked yesterday. He survived, but the message was clear, cooperate with us and you're a target. He pulled up a map on the screen. This is our area of responsibility. Crestwood Hills and the surrounding counties. We need to secure every witness, assess ongoing threats, and make sure no one else gets hurt. One of the younger agents raised a hand. Sir, what about the local police? Can we trust them? Some of them, Detective Walsh and Detective Torres, are clean. They'll be working with us, but assume the rest of the department is compromised until proven otherwise. What about organized crime? Another agent asked. Marchetti's people. I had a conversation with Marchetti last night. He's agreed to back off, but trust nothing. These people operate on self-interest. The moment the equation changes, so does their behavior. Chen stepped forward. We've also got good news. Vance started cooperating yesterday. He's naming names, exposing operations. It's going to take years to follow up on all the leads. Which means years of potential retaliation against witnesses, Sterling added. Our job is to keep them alive long enough to see justice done. They spent the next 4 hours planning. Security details, safe houses, communication protocols, emergency response procedures. At noon, Sterling's phone rang. It was Rossi. Marcus, I'm at the courthouse. Thorne's sentencing got moved up. It's happening in an hour. Sterling checked his watch. I'll be there. He walked into the courthouse just as the hearing was starting. The room was packed. Reporters, victims, family members of people Thorne had hurt over the years. Thorne sat at the defense table looking small, diminished, nothing like the powerful chief who'd terrorized this town for decades. The judge entered. Everyone stood. This court is now in session. We're here for the sentencing of David Thorne, who has pleaded guilty to multiple counts of assault, false imprisonment, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, the government recommends a sentence of 8 years in federal prison followed by 3 years of supervised release. The defense attorney stood. Your Honor, my client has already lost everything. His career, his reputation, his freedom. We ask for leniency. Mr. Thorne is 62 years old. 8 years might as well be a life sentence. The judge looked at Thorne. Mr. Thorne, do you wish to address the court before I impose sentence? Thorne stood slowly. He looked at Sterling sitting in the gallery. I spent 30 years as a police officer. 30 years telling myself I was protecting this community, keeping it safe, maintaining order. His voice was rough, broken. But somewhere along the way I forgot what that meant. I stopped protecting everyone and started protecting only some people, the right people, the people who looked like me, who thought like me. He paused, struggling with the words. Agent Sterling moved into this community and I saw him as a threat. Not because he'd done anything wrong, but because he was different, because his presence challenged my view of how things should be. So I protected Officer Miller when he assaulted Agent Sterling. I covered it up. I lied. Tears were running down Thorne's face now. And then I kept lying, and the lies got bigger and more people got hurt. Detective Evans is in the hospital right now because of me, because of the system I built, the culture I created. He turned to face Sterling directly. Agent Sterling, I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know you did this community a service by exposing what we'd become. You showed us what we'd lost. And maybe if I spend every day of my prison sentence thinking about that, I can find some way to make peace with what I've done. The courtroom was silent. The judge spoke. Mr. Thorne, I've heard your statement. I've reviewed the evidence. And I've considered the impact of your crimes on this community. She paused. You were entrusted with power. The power to protect citizens, to uphold the law, to serve justice. Instead, you abused that power for decades. You created a system of oppression and corruption. You protected criminals with badges and persecuted innocent people. Her voice hardened. The sentence recommended by the government is insufficient. I am sentencing you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You will also forfeit your pension and all benefits. Thorne closed his eyes, nodded slowly. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at Sterling one last time, not with hatred, not with resentment, with something that might have been gratitude. Sterling watched him go, feeling nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication, just the cold weight of justice served. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sterling pushed through them without comment, but one reporter persisted, shoving a microphone in his face. Agent Sterling, do you feel vindicated? Do you feel like justice was served? Sterling stopped, looked directly at the camera. Justice was served, but vindication no, because justice doesn't undo the harm. It doesn't give back what was taken. It doesn't heal the wounds. He paused. Detective Evans is in the hospital. Chloe Peterson lost her job and her sense of security. I can never get back the dignity that was stripped from me in that diner. Justice means consequences for those who caused harm, but it doesn't mean everything's okay now. Then what does it mean? The reporter pressed. It means we stop the harm from continuing. We break the cycle. We make sure the next person who sits in that booth, who moves into this neighborhood, who looks different or thinks different, they don't have to go through what I went through. He walked to his car and drove away. That night, Sterling returned to the hospital. Evans was awake. Sarah and the girls had just left. Evans looked pale, weak, but alive. Hey, Evans said, his voice barely above a whisper. Hey, yourself. Sterling sat down. How are you feeling? Like I got stabbed 3 times. That's probably accurate. They sat in silence for a moment. "I heard what you did," Evans said. "Going to see Marchetti, Marcus, that was crazy." "Maybe, but it worked. This time. But one of these days your luck's going to run out." "Probably." Sterling looked at his friend. "Mike, I need to ask you something. If you could go back knowing what you know now, would you still do it? Would you still come forward with that evidence?" Evans didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Even after this? Especially after this?" Evans shifted, wincing at the pain. "Because look what happened, Marcus. We brought down Thorne. We exposed Vance. We stopped a system that was hurting people. Yeah, I paid a price. But how many people did we save? How many future victims? You almost died." "But I didn't, and even if I had..." Evans met his eyes. "Some things are worth dying for. Truth, justice, doing what's right even when it's hard. My kids need to grow up in a world where people like their dad stand up, where being brave means something." Sterling felt his throat tighten. "You're a better man than most, Mike." "No, I'm just a man who finally did what I should have done years ago. You were the catalyst. You showed me it was possible." They talked for another hour, about the case, about recovery, about what came next. When Sterling finally left, it was after midnight. He drove through empty streets, past the diner where it all started, past the precinct that was being rebuilt from the ground up. His phone buzzed. Text from Chen. "All witnesses secured. No further incidents. Marchetti keeping his word so far. Good work today." Sterling allowed himself a small smile. Maybe they really had broken the cycle. Maybe the message had been received. Maybe things really could change. He drove to the house on the hill one last time. The moving company had already packed most of his things. Tomorrow they'd load the truck and he'd finally leave for Chicago. But tonight he stood on the balcony and looked out at Crestwood Hills. 7 weeks ago he'd come here looking for peace. He'd found war instead. But in fighting that war, maybe he'd created the peace he'd been looking for. Not for himself, but for everyone else. And maybe that was enough. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But instinct made him answer. "Sterling? Agent Sterling, this is Chloe Peterson." "Chloe, how are you?" "Good. Great, actually. I just wanted to call and say thank you. I heard about what you did. Confronting Marchetti, protecting all of us. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." "Well, thank you anyway. And I wanted you to know I got accepted to law school. Full scholarship. I'm going to be a civil rights attorney, like Ms. Rozzi." Sterling felt something warm spread through his chest. "That's wonderful, Chloe. You'll be great at it." "I hope so, because the world needs more people like you and Ms. Rozzi, people who fight for others. I want to be one of those people." "You already are. You recorded that video when you could have looked away. You testified when you could have stayed silent. You're already one of those people." She was quiet for a moment. "Will I see you again?" "Maybe. The world's smaller than you think." "Then I hope I do. Goodbye, Agent Sterling." "Goodbye, Chloe. And good luck." He hung up and looked back at the city. One young woman inspired to fight for justice. One corrupt system dismantled. One community beginning to heal. Was it worth it? The assault, the humiliation, the danger, the cost. Sterling thought about sitting in that booth 7 weeks ago. Thought about the food dripping down his face. The rage he'd kept buried. The promise he'd made. You just made the biggest mistake of your entire life. He'd kept that promise. And in keeping it, maybe he'd found something he didn't even know he was looking for. Not peace, not vindication, not even justice, really. Purpose, the knowledge that his life meant something, that his fight mattered, that standing up made a difference. Sterling walked inside, closed the door on Crestwood Hills one final time. Tomorrow, Chicago. Tomorrow, a new fight. Tomorrow, more people who needed someone to stand up for them. And Marcus Sterling would be there, because that's what he did. That's who he was. And nothing, not corrupt cops, not powerful criminals, not the weight of a broken system would ever change that. He turned off the lights and went to sleep, ready for whatever came next. The moving truck arrived at 6 a.m. sharp. 2 men in coveralls started loading boxes while Sterling did a final walkthrough of the house. Each room held a memory now. The library where Miller had broken in, the basement where he'd built his case, the balcony where he'd stood and decided to fight instead of run. He was checking the kitchen one last time when his phone rang. Chen. "Marcus, we have a situation. You need to get to the federal building now." Sterling's instincts flared. "What kind of situation? Vance? He's asking for you specifically. Says he has information, but he'll only share it with you, face to face." What kind of information? He won't say, but Marcus, he sounds scared. Really scared. Something's got him rattled. Sterling looked at the moving truck at his packed life, ready to head to Chicago. Then he looked at his keys. I'm on my way. He drove to the federal building parked in the underground garage, took the elevator to the secure floor where high-value prisoners were held during questioning. Chen was waiting outside the interrogation room. He's been asking for you for 3 hours, refused to talk to anyone else. What do you think he wants? I think he realized he's not as safe in custody as he thought. Someone got to Evans. Someone who's connected enough to reach inside our protective custody. That's got Vance thinking about his own mortality. Sterling nodded. Let me talk to him alone. Marcus. Alone Chen. He wants to feel like he's in control, like this is his choice. I give him that illusion. Maybe he gives us something real. Chen hesitated, then stepped aside. Sterling entered the interrogation room. Vance sat at the metal table, hands cuffed, looking nothing like the confident deputy mayor who'd terrorized this town. He looked old, diminished, afraid. Agent Sterling, thank you for coming. Sterling sat across from him. You wanted to talk. Talk. I need assurances first. Full immunity for anything I tell you today. Witness protection for me and my family. You already cut a deal, Vance. You don't get to renegotiate. The deal I cut was before I knew how deep this goes, before I understood what I was really up against. Vance leaned forward, chains rattling. You think you won, Agent Sterling. You think you brought down the corruption in Crestwood Hills, but you only scratched the surface. Sterling kept his expression neutral. I'm listening? Thorne Marchetti, we weren't the top of the pyramid. We were middle management. The real power, it goes higher. Much higher. Names, Vance. Give me names. Vance shook his head. Not until I have guarantees. Because the people I'm about to expose, they're not just criminals. They're senators, federal judges, people who can reach into prisons and make problems disappear. Sterling felt his pulse quicken, but didn't show it. You're saying federal officials are involved in your operation. I'm saying the operation is bigger than you can imagine. Crestwood Hills was just one node in a network that spans 6 states. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, contract killings. And it's all protected from the top down. You have proof. I have documentation, names, dates, transactions. Everything you need to take down people who thought they were untouchable. Vance's hands shook. But they know I have it, and they know I'm talking. That's why Evans was attacked. That's why I'm terrified. Because if they can reach him in a police parking lot, they can reach me anywhere. Sterling studied him. This wasn't a con. Vance was genuinely scared. Where's the documentation? Safe place, insurance policy I set up years ago. If anything happens to me, it all goes public. Automatic release to every major news outlet. That's why you're still alive. That's why I'm still alive. But insurance only works if people believe you'll use it. If they decide I'm bluffing, if they think they can get to the documentation before it goes public. Vance didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Sterling stood, walked to the door, knocked twice. Chen entered. Get the U.S. attorney on the phone. Tell her we need an emergency immunity agreement. Full protection. Marcus, we can't just... Do it, Chen. Vance has information about federal corruption. If what he's saying is true, this goes way beyond Crestwood Hills. Chen left. Sterling turned back to Vance. You give us the documentation. You testify. You name names. In exchange, witness protection for you and your family. But Vance... If you're lying, if this is some kind of play, I will personally make sure you spend every day of your life in the worst federal prison we can find. I'm not lying. I wish I was. 30 minutes later, the U.S. attorney arrived with an immunity agreement. Vance signed it with shaking hands. Then he started talking. For 6 hours, Sterling listened as Vance laid out a conspiracy that made his stomach turn. 2 U.S. senators, 3 federal judges, a deputy director at the DEA, dozens of state officials, all connected through a network of corruption that had operated for over a decade. They met quarterly at a private estate in Virginia. They divided territories. They set policies. They protected each other's operations. And they eliminated threats. Who ordered the hit on Evans? Sterling asked. Senator James Corrigan. He's the one who runs the enforcement arm. When someone becomes a problem, Corrigan handles it. Sterling knew the name. Corrigan was a 3-term senator chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Powerful, respected, connected. and according to Vance, a criminal mastermind. You have proof of Corrigan's involvement. Recordings, financial transfers, communications. It's all in the documentation. Vance gave them an address, a storage facility in Delaware, Unit 237. Everything you need is there. But Agent Sterling, you need to understand what you're about to do. These people have been untouchable for years. They have resources you can't imagine. Going after them means going to war. Then we go to war. Sterling left the interrogation room and immediately convened a meeting with Chen and the U.S. Attorney. We need to move fast, Sterling said. Retrieve the documentation, verify it, then coordinate simultaneous arrests across 6 states. We hit everyone at once before they can warn each other. The U.S. Attorney shook her head. This is too big. We need to involve Main Justice, get approval from the director? No, Sterling interrupted. The moment we loop in Main Justice, word leaks. Someone calls someone. The network mobilizes. We lose our element of surprise. You're talking about arresting federal officials without proper authorization. That's career suicide. I'm talking about doing our jobs. Vance gave us evidence of crimes. We have an obligation to act on it. Chen stepped in. Marcus is right. We can't wait. But we do need help. I'm calling in the Organized Crime Task Force. We'll need at least 50 agents to execute this. The U.S. Attorney looked at both of them. If you're wrong, if this falls apart, your careers are over. Mine too. Then we better not be wrong. They spent the next 12 hours planning. Sterling personally led a team to Delaware to retrieve Vance's documentation. They found it exactly where he said 3 boxes of files, hard drives, recorded phone conversations. Back in Crestwood Hills, forensic accountants worked through the night verifying the financial records. The evidence was overwhelming. Payments traced directly to Corrigan's shell companies. Recordings of him ordering hits. Communications discussing territory and operations. It was everything they needed. By dawn, they had arrest warrants for 47 people across 6 states, including Senator Corrigan. Sterling stood in the command center at the federal building looking at the map on the wall. Red pins marked each target. This was it, the culmination of everything that started 7 weeks ago in a diner. Chen walked over. Teams are in position. We're ready to move on your signal. Sterling looked at his watch. 6 a.m. Time to send a message that nobody was above the law. Execute. Across 6 states, FBI teams simultaneously raided homes, offices, and private clubs. Sterling personally led the team to arrest Senator Corrigan at his Virginia estate. They breached the front door at exactly 6:03 a.m. Corrigan was in his study, already dressed as if he'd been expecting them. Senator James Corrigan, you're under arrest for racketeering conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and corruption. Corrigan didn't resist. He just smiled. Agent Sterling, the man who started all this, I've heard about you. I'm sure you have. You think this changes anything. You think arresting me stops the machine. I'm one part of something much bigger. Then we'll arrest the rest too? They cuffed him and let him out. News helicopters were already circling overhead. Word was spreading fast. By noon, all 47 arrests were complete. By 2 p.m., the story was breaking on every major news network. By 5 p.m., the Attorney General was holding a press conference. Sterling watched it on a monitor in the command center. The Attorney General praised the FBI's work, called it the largest corruption bust in modern history, took credit for the operation. Chen stood next to Sterling. You know she had nothing to do with this. I know, but that's politics. Let her have her moment. The only thing that matters is we got them. Not all of them. Marchetti disappeared. Probably fled the country when he saw the arrest starting. Sterling nodded. We'll find him eventually. He can't hide forever. His phone rang. It was Rossi. Marcus, have you seen the news? This is incredible. You brought down a senator, multiple judges. This is going to change everything. It's a start. A start. Marcus, this is the biggest corruption case in decades. And there's still more out there. More people who think they're above the law. More systems that protect the powerful at the expense of the powerless. Sterling paused. This isn't the end, Isabella. It's just one battle in a war that never really ends. Then I'm glad you're fighting it. They talked for a few more minutes, then Sterling hung up. He was exhausted, hadn't slept in over 30 hours. But there was one more thing he needed to do. He drove to the hospital. Evans was sitting up in bed watching the news on TV. His color was better. He'd live. Marcus, Evans muted the TV. Did you really just arrest a U.S. senator? Yeah? How does that feel? Sterling thought about it. 7 weeks ago, he'd had food poured on his head, been humiliated, assaulted, and he'd promised that the man who did it would regret it. Miller was in prison. Thorne was in prison. Vance was cooperating from protective custody. Corrigan was in custody. Dozens of corrupt officials were facing justice. "It feels like we kept a promise," Sterling said. Evans smiled. "You know what the crazy part is? All of this started because you wanted a cup of coffee. You just wanted to sit in a booth and read your book in peace." "Yeah." "And instead, you dismantled a criminal empire that spanned 6 states. "I didn't do it alone?" "No, but you started it. You stood up when you could have walked away. You fought when you could have just moved somewhere else." Evans's voice grew serious. "Mike, what you did, it inspired people. Look at me. Look at Chloe. Look at Walsh and Torres. We all found our courage because you showed us it was possible." Sterling felt something in his chest, not pride exactly, but a sense of rightness, of purpose fulfilled. "How long until you're back on your feet?" "Doctors say 2 months, but I'm not going back to the 14th precinct. Too many memories. Too much bad history." "What will you do?" "FBI is offering me a position, liaison between local and federal law enforcement, help rebuild the department from the ground up. I think I'm going to take it." "You should. They need someone who understands how things got so broken." They talked for another hour. About recovery, about rebuilding, about the future that was finally possible now that the rot had been cut out. When Sterling finally left the hospital, it was getting dark. He drove through Crestwood Hills one last time. Past the diner, past the precinct, past all the places that had become part of his story. His phone buzzed. Text from Chen. "Chicago assignment is back on. They want you there Monday. Your reputation just went national, Marcus. Every field office wants you now." Sterling smiled. 7 weeks ago, he'd wanted to disappear, to hide from the world and find peace. Now he was the most visible FBI agent in the country, the man who'd brought down a senator and exposed federal corruption. He typed back, "I'll be there Monday." He drove to the house on the hill one last time. The moving truck was long gone. The house was empty. But standing in that empty space, Sterling felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because the fight was over. The fight would never be over. But because he'd found his place in it. Found his purpose. Found the thing that made all the pain and sacrifice worth it. He was a protector, a warrior, a man who stood up when others couldn't. And he was good at it. His phone rang one last time. Unknown number. Sterling almost ignored it, but habit made him answer. "Sterling?" "Agent Sterling, this is Director Wallace from FBI headquarters. I wanted to personally commend you on the operation today. Exceptional work." "Thank you, sir. I also wanted to inform you that you're being promoted. Supervisory Special Agent. You'll be leading a new task force focused on federal corruption, based in D.C. Answers directly to me." Sterling was quiet for a moment. D.C. meant the center of power, the heart of the system, the place where he could make the biggest impact. "When do I start?" "Monday. I'm sending you the details now, but Agent Sterling, what you did here taking down Corrigan and his network, that was just the beginning. We have intelligence suggesting there are more networks like this, more corruption at the highest levels. We need someone who's not afraid to go after powerful people, someone who can't be bought or intimidated." "I'm not afraid." "I know, that's why I want you leading this. No one is above the law, Agent Sterling. Not cops, not mayors, not senators. Your job is to prove that." "Understood, sir." "Good. See you Monday." Sterling hung up and looked out at Crestwood Hills, the town that had tried to break him and instead made him stronger, the place where he'd lost his peace but found his purpose. He walked out of the house, locked the door, and dropped the keys in the mailbox for the real estate agent. Then he got in his car and drove away. Not to Chicago anymore. To Washington, D.C., to the center of power where the real fight was waiting. As he drove, Sterling thought about everything that had happened. 7 weeks that changed his life, changed this town, changed the trajectory of federal law enforcement, all because one cop poured food on his head, all because Sterling refused to be broken, all because he stood up. His phone buzzed with news alerts. The corruption story was still breaking, more details emerging, more connections being exposed. The network that Corrigan thought was invincible was being torn apart piece by piece. And somewhere in federal custody, Richard Vance was sleeping a little easier, knowing his insurance policy had paid off, knowing his cooperation had saved his life and brought down the people who'd turned him into a criminal. Sterling drove through the night, heading toward D.C., toward his new assignment, toward whatever came next. He'd wanted peace. He'd wanted quiet. He'd wanted to be left alone. Instead, he'd become a symbol, a reminder that justice was still possible, that corruption could be exposed, that power could be challenged. And maybe Sterling thought as dawn broke over the highway ahead of him, maybe that was better than peace anyway. because peace was just the absence of conflict. But justice was something you built, something you fought for, something you earned through sacrifice and courage and the refusal to look away when things got hard. Sterling had earned his justice. So had Evans and Chloe and Walsh and Torres and everyone else who'd stood up. And now it was time to help others earn theirs. He turned on the radio. The news was still covering the arrests. Pundits were calling it the biggest political scandal since Watergate, calling for investigations, calling for accountability. The system was starting to work again, not perfectly, not completely, but it was working, and Sterling would keep fighting to make sure it kept working. In D.C., in Chicago, in whatever city needed him next. Because that's what heroes did. They showed up, they stood up, they fought back, even when it cost them everything, even when the odds were impossible, even when they were just one person against a corrupt system. Sometimes one person was enough. Sometimes one act of courage sparked a movement. Sometimes refusing to back down changed the world. Sterling had learned that lesson in a diner 7 weeks ago. He'd remember it for the rest of his life. And he'd spend the rest of his life making sure everyone else remembered it too. The road stretched ahead long and uncertain, but Sterling wasn't afraid anymore. He'd faced down corrupt cops and organized crime bosses and senators who thought they were above the law. Whatever came next, he was ready, because Marcus Sterling had learned something important, something that changed everything. You don't find peace by running from the fight. You find peace by standing in the middle of the fire and refusing to burn, by facing injustice and saying no more, by looking evil in the eye and not blinking. That's where real peace came from. Not from the absence of conflict, but from the knowledge that you'd done everything in your power to make things right. That you'd fought the good fight. That you'd stood for something that mattered. Sterling had that peace now, hard-earned, battle-tested, unshakable, and nothing not corrupt systems, not powerful criminals, not the weight of the entire world could take it from him. Because he'd proven to himself and everyone else that one person standing up could change everything. Could topple empires, could bring justice where there was none, could make the impossible possible. That was his legacy now, not the arrests or the convictions or the headlines, but the example he'd set, the courage he'd shown, the refusal to be broken. Other people would see what he'd done, would remember the FBI agent who got food poured on his head and brought down a senator, would be inspired to stand up themselves when injustice came to their door. That was the real victory. Not just stopping the corruption in Crestwood Hills, but lighting a fire that would spread across the country, inspiring others to fight to resist, to refuse to accept that things had to be the way they'd always been. Sterling drove into the sunrise toward Washington, toward his next battle with one truth burning bright in his chest. Nobody was above the law, and everybody deserved justice, and as long as he had breath in his body, he would fight to make sure both of those things stayed true.